All right, listeners, welcome to this week's episode of Tales of Abundance. Let's jump right into the abundance briefing. Anthony, you had a topic about the happiness U-curve and why life gets better after 50. It comes from a Psychology Today article that is, credited the Brookings Institute and some research they did. You want to jump into that and tell listeners what you found and why it's interesting?
Yeah. So this happiness curve breaks, levels of quote unquote happiness, whatever the definition of happiness is, into, people in their 20s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond. And what the study says is that people are happiest in their 20s, they're least happy in their 40s, but then they tend to bounce back in their 50s, 60s, and beyond. And there are two things that one seems pretty obvious, that at least happy in their 40s may, and you guys can weigh in on this, may have to do with career stress and family, having kids, or not achieving, the things that you wanted to achieve, and having a negative outlook on the future, as well as, negative feelings about the past. But what struck me the most was that people are happiest in their 20s. And boy, that just doesn't feel right to me right now in this day and age. Maybe this was true before, but would you guys agree that when you look around and you see the news and, the stress of, kids getting out of college, not necessarily having the real career opportunities that they once had, and the inability to own a home, and not getting married and not having kids and so on and so forth. I don't know. That just struck me as maybe it was, but now it isn't. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I mean, there's certainly some of that, right? Like young kids and not being able to buy a home, and, there is some doomerism going on there, but they're also young and happy and having a good time, and, their body's still generally healthy. So, and there is that whole thing about just being a kid and thinking you're invincible that I think is also playing in.
Yeah, maybe there's a sense of naivete that, I can accomplish anything, but I don't know. It just, like I said, that's something that I just had a hard time swallowing. Conversely, you know, from a personal standpoint, I can certainly say that as you get old and you start to become more open-minded and kind of able to handle the stresses of the day, or the surprises that come. Yeah, it seems to be that you would become more settled and more um, happier later in life, and satisfied with where you are. Mostly because you really can't do anything about what you don't have, but you can certainly enjoy what you do have. So yeah, I can see how that is.
I mean, this is the study that came from the Gallup World Poll, where this was derived from. This study is about 10 years old or so, or at least the Brookings Institute report is. And so I think it's what are all the things causing stress, and then what happens to those stressors. And some of those stressors, I think, go away, and some of it becomes our ability to handle the stress, right? And you can see that U-shaped curve changes, and there's difference for married satisfaction versus single versus all data and what happens. And so there's, yeah, I mean, it's interesting data, right? But I think this really what it means is that stress impacts happiness. And as you can do things to handle stress more effectively and reduce stress in your life, that's, those are helpful things. And so there's
Yeah,
a scatter chart here that's really interesting too at the beginning, that just shows like it's a little different in each country where the turning point is. And then
yeah,
in terms of like overall happiness, pretty interesting here.
yeah. But
So
what's great here is that most people would say my best years are behind me, but the data suggests that isn't true. So that's the good
that's right.
news, and we can
That's right.
close on that. So
More
yeah,
abundance ahead. And I think that's,
ex-
yeah, more abundance ahead. That's great.
yeah.
There's hope.
All right. Our second topic is a company by the name of Eon Systems claims it has uploaded a fruit fly's brain into a digital body. So if you think about Star Trek and transporter technology, they were transporting everybody's brain and everything else into their own body, but here they're putting it on a computer. So I don't think we're there yet, but is this a step on the way? And to give you some perspective, researchers mapped the entire fruit fly connectome, which is 140,000 neurons and 50 million synapses. Now, I read a thing over the weekend. I forget what it was. It's a fraction of what a human brain would be. But this is the first step. And what, talking about abundance, what does this open up, right? And I think of Ray Kurzweil talking about wanting to upload his consciousness and live forever, and he's been predicting this has been coming. Well, this seems like it's a step on that, on that path. But what other experiments does this allow us to do instead of having to take humans? If you can upload people's consciousness, whether it's humans or animals, I mean, is it a new drug discovery? I don't know. What do you guys think of this?
I mean, you're taking
Could
me
they have
back
picked,
30.
could they have picked anything smaller to work on?
Well, here's the deal. So 35 years ago, when I was doing biology for real, we use fruit flies to experiment all the time because of, a whole number of reasons. And so what I wonder about, and I hope is true, is this allows us to do much faster, broader data with less steps in terms of running simulations for things to see what likely outcomes are. And if we can do it with a fruit fly, then hopefully we can at some point do this with other brains so that human testing becomes less risky. We can do more, we can find more problems before it really impacts humans. And the research cycle hopefully speeds up with much better data, was my hope. I don't know if any of that's true or not, but that would certainly be something I would hope coming out of this, is we can test faster, test more, and reduce the risk of testing and the cost of testing too.
Yeah, and Anthony, I think it's like it's a fruit fly now, but the next is a mouse, right? And then the next is a bigger animal, and they got to work their way up. I mean, they got to start somewhere. I still think it's pretty amazing. It's a long ways from being able to upload a human brain, but it seems like
it's more than amazing that science is able to. How many hundreds of thousands did you say neurons and synapses going on something so tiny that they can figure that out? I'm absolutely amazed at what science is doing.
And biology has used this for decades, right? They use it because they're cheap. They can do it in huge numbers, and fruit flies last like a couple weeks. And they have it. I think the overlap with the human genome is like greater than 50%. And so all those things make it a very interesting starting place for research. Or a starting place is the wrong term. An interesting milestone for research.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. And it should be mentioned, this hasn't been peer reviewed yet, or I don't think anybody else has recreated it, but very, very interesting. So, John, you've got an Anthropic article about the future of work. You want to share that with listeners?
Yeah, super cool. Like I'm constantly thinking about like, what does AI mean for the future? What does it mean for the future of our kids? What does it mean for the future of work? I think those are questions that are really, really important. And so Anthropic put this article out on March 5th of this year that went through how they're going to measure early evidence of AI's impact. And the things that they're saying here aren't going to be a surprise to the three of us. Like they're going to find a new way to measure AI's impact on the workplace. Okay, that's cool. Like we can agree, hopefully over time, how to measure this stuff. They say that AI is a long way from reaching its capability. I think we all know that. They say that workers that are most exposed are going to be professionals. And they say that the most at risk from their research says they're going to be older, female, more highly educated, more highly paid. Like, I think that's worrisome and notable. And that there's no systematic increase in unemployment for those highly exposed workers today, though there is evidence of hiring younger workers has slowed down in these exposed occupations. And this is the cool part. Like, it goes through and gives a chart of what those exposed theoretical occupations are and what they're actually observing. And so, and the shapes of those two things are fairly similar. And it's things we've talked about before, where it's like, grounds maintenance is less impacted than computer, math, architecture, and engineering. And and the impact, is likely coming. So I think these are some things to watch out for. To me, they're also signals of where to look for future abundance. Like as you look through kind of industrialization changes and information age changes, you can kind of see where the economy is moving. And I think this is one tool that people can use to see where the economy is moving, to identify opportunities for their future. And, one of my friends who's in private equity said this really, really smartly in the last week. He said, going into the future, people are going to have to learn how to earn in the new economy or how to own in the new economy. And I think that's probably been true for most economies, but earn or own is a great mental model for how to think about where to identify opportunity in the kind of changing economy. So that's what I got from it.
Yeah, I know. This is just, there's so much opportunity and there's so much excitement with all the technology and what could happen with AI and robotics and everything else going on. But it also makes you wonder, I've had 5 or 6 people talk to me in the last week, just kind of asking the question, like, should I send my kids to college? Or what should I be doing with my kids? I mean, I was talking to a friend yesterday, his son's 11. And I don't think it's ever even occurred to them that he wouldn't go to college, right? They've got a college fund, and he's like, I don't think by the time he's there, this is going to be, and it's scary for people. I think entering the job market. This goes back to what Anthony was talking about, 20-somethings and all of that. But man, I think we just got to remind ourselves that everything is getting easier, and I don't know where it's going to go. And I think you have to be adaptable and ready for what's coming, but if there's robots and AI and everything else, it's just making life that much easier and creating breakthroughs, then we'll figure out something to do. Technology, it might be a little bloody in the meantime, but there will be something for us to do, I think, moving forward.
There's a lot of abundance on the way. I think 11-year-olds might have it a little bit easier today than the people who are in college today. I think people who are in college and early career today have to probably be a little bit more thoughtful and deliberate about the direction they want to head. In fact, I talked to a group of college students this morning and had them read this article so they can start thinking for themselves about what's going to happen after they graduate. And so I think, part of my role, self-proclaimed, right, is that I want to go out and help people navigate this stuff for the college students that are kind of in my sphere. And so how can I help them is by helping them be thoughtful about it. Like how do they see the changes as they come and kind of tool themselves for the coming economy? I do believe it's going to be bigger and better.
Yeah, and I think what you have to think about in terms of what's happening, the donut, not the whole, right? I think AI is the whole. It's just one of the things that's going on. The donut is the entire environment. And, man, if you will, not being derisive, has been pursuing improvements in productivity since the beginning of time, right? And that's what you have to be conscious of is, the one that struck me on your chart, John, quickly, because it was easy to read, was to the left was the office worker. They have just now started to test, where can we gain productivity with our quote unquote office workers, however you want to define that. And as time goes on, they're going to figure that out, right? There are going to be some severely impacted areas of the office worker as that particular bubble accelerates. Social services, on the other hand, on the other side, which right now is more of a human to human interaction, I would not be worried about that. I'd be watching that, what changes in social service, the analysis of the people being treated using AI to be predictive of what might occur down the road and the interventions then that would occur, things like that. So everything's kind of at risk. Everything is about improving throughput, getting rid of the bottlenecks. And that's what you have to look for and not be surprised and not dismiss a particular area because you don't think it could be impacted because we've all been surprised by what's taken place. So.
Yeah, lots going on.
All right, listeners, we're going to go to break. When we come back, we have a really special guest, Dr. Jeffrey Gladden, and he is a cardiologist who just thought there's a better way to approach longevity and health. And I think you're really going to love, I know I do, his big theme is how to make 100 the new 30, or what if you could have the health and wellness of a 30-year-old when you're 100 years old. So that's pretty exciting to me. I think back when I was 30, I was playing basketball 2 hours a day, probably 6 days a week, and playing football a few hours a week, and running and doing all kinds of stuff that, I'm not quite that active today. So looking forward to that after the break.
Here at Tales of Abundance, we know that fitness is just as important as money or milestones. It's one of our key 5 F's for lots of us. Taking care of my body while I build my life is one of the more time-consuming and difficult goals to chase. That's why we're partnering with AG1. It's a daily drinkable habit. Less than a minute, that's formulated with 75 plus vitamins and nutrients and designed to support energy, digestion, and immune defense. It even has a few grams of protein that we're all chasing these days. And if you want to try it with our affiliate link, you'll also receive a free AG1 flavor sampler, plus vitamin D3 plus K2 with your welcome kit when you first subscribe, a $72 value. Go to shop.drinkag1.com/tales.
Listeners, welcome back from the break. As promised, we are here with Dr. Gladden to talk about making 100 the new 30. And I love this concept. So, Dr. Gladden, welcome, and thanks you for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Good to be here. Thanks, guys.
Jeff, good to see you again, too.
Yeah, likewise, John.
I think the last time we saw each other, you were speaking on conference. You're a little bit of a celebrity in this space, except for the little bit part. I think you're really well known, and you talk about this cool concept of making 100 the new 30. For those of our listeners that haven't heard that before, what do you mean by that? You can't really mean I can act like a 30-year-old when I'm 100, can you?
Yeah. It's a little bit of a novel concept. I think when people think about longevity, they've got a lot of different ideas of what that could be. And you hear people talk about, well, I want to live to be 100. I want to live be 120 or 150 or 180 or 360 or 700 or immortal or whatever. What I discovered in my own journey was that it's very difficult for me to relate to that. So every picture I saw of somebody that's 100 years old or 110 or 120, it's like, gosh, that's not really what I'm going for, right? It's not really what we're going for. And so what we all can relate to, though, and what we all have at least a memory of, if not access to, is our youthfulness. And it really stuck with me that the idea of longevity, and it's evolved from here, and I'll share that with you as well, but the idea is that if we can maintain a youthful body for the duration, then that's really a big part of the gift. And so making 100 the new 30, I think, is an admirable goal. And I also think that, you can't ever get to something that you're not visualizing. So when I visualize myself at 100, I visualize myself as 30. And then that drives a lot of questions about, well, I don't feel this way, so what do I need to do to get there, right? It's rather than making peace with it. So it's meant to be both factual as well as inspirational, as well as motivational, as well as directional. So that's kind of the idea behind it. Yeah.
What does 100 look like for you? So when you visualize 100, tell me about that.
Yeah, so that's a great question. The other piece of it for me is that I think that longevity represents really the greatest opportunity humanity has ever had to sort of upgrade what the human experience can be. And what I mean by that is that when we're 100 years old, if we have a 30-year-old body and a 300-year-old mind, right? So now we've developed all the wisdom, all the tranquility, all the insight, all the equanimity, right? All the perspective, all the self-love. We've healed all the traumas and all the things that are holding us back. Imagine the contributions that we can make to the planet, to each other, etc., when we're working and operating from a place of a 30-year-old body with all the capabilities and a 300-year-old mind, right? So for me, I get super excited about this because I think, every generation of humans has thought, well, it'd be nice to live longer, it'd be nice to live healthier, but I think the opportunity here is to kind of combine the two with this psycho-spiritual wisdom that comes from the 300 or 3,000-year-old mind even, and having the youthful body to go with it. And so now you're combining something that humanity's really never had an opportunity to access before. And I think that to me is incredibly exciting. What can we accomplish if we go there, right? So.
And
Are
do
we?
you think that's? Oh, go ahead, Randy.
Well, are you talking about somebody that is, let's say somebody's 80 now or 60 now or whatever. When that person gets to 100, they can be like they were when they're 30, or are you talking more about a 30-year-old person being able to maintain that body?
Yeah, that's a great question too. So obviously, one of the preconceptions, and I think also misconceptions about aging, is that it's a linear process because chronology is linear, right? Every year it's another birthday. I'm a year older. I don't feel that much different, right? It's linear. But in actual fact, biologically, it's exponential. It's an exponential process. And there's tons of data that shows that, and we all intuitively know it, right? Like if you see, you know that people age so much more between 70 and 80, 80 and 90, right, than they do between 20 and 30, 30 and 40. And yet, we're handicapped in our ability to relate to it. Because if everyone on the call were to ask themselves, geez, what am I going to be like 20 years from now? Right? What am I going to be like 20 years from now? It's virtually impossible for us to imagine we're going to be any different than we are today. Right? So we're in an exponential game of decline, and we can't really relate to it, even though we see it all around us. And so we live in this kind of bubble of denial, so to speak, right? It's not going to happen to me, even though we know it's going to happen to us. We still live in that bubble, which basically makes us complacent, which actually keeps us from asking the right questions. And the right questions are, how do I maintain my youthfulness? How do I wake up 27 every day? I just had a birthday on February 28th. I was born in 1954. You guys can do the math on that, but I wake up 27 every single day. And the reason I wake up 27 is because I'll be 27 this decade, 28 the next, 29 the next, and I'll be 30 when I'm 100. But waking up 27 every day enables me to ask myself, do I feel 27? And if there's some part of me that doesn't feel 27, I don't say, but you're so good for your age. You just got back from a snowboarding trip. You're mountain biking better than ever. You're doing all these things. I never say that. What I say is, what do I need to do to get back to 27 in every form and function that I have, right? And so it's the questions that drive all progress, right? And the interesting thing about humans is we go through life thinking that our life task is to find our answers, right? But it's really not about finding the answers, it's about finding the questions. Even if you find something that you believe and hold to be dear, like a religious conviction or whatever, it's still the questions inside of that will drive progress. How do I be more loving, more caring, more, whatever? And so what I've discovered is that, by waking up 27, then I can maintain my youthfulness. Now, the question you asked was, well, what about an 80-year-old? Well, because of the exponential decline, right, they're in a deeper hole, right, than somebody that's 70 or 60 or 50 or 40 or whatever their age, right? So it's harder, right? And the interesting thing is that it's much easier for a Brian Johnson in his 40s to get younger than it is for somebody in their 60s. It's exponentially harder in their 60s or 70s or whatever, right? So yes, kudos to Brian. He's doing a lot of great things. It's also fairly easy, right? Relatively speaking. So the thing is that I think technology is accelerating at such a pace that even for someone in their 80s, that they're going to be able to access levels of function and activity. It may not be 30, but it's going to be so much better than what they had, right? And I think for people that are 30, I think the ability to maintain 30 is going to be completely possible. And I think for someone like myself, I think I'll get pretty darn close. And so I'm super pumped about that. But I also really focus tremendously on developing the 300/3,000-year-old mind, because regardless, that also brings so much peace and joy and tranquility and love and caring, right? So that's a wonderful place to live. Yeah.
Now, you've kind of talked about your four pillars. Oh, go ahead, Anthony. I just got the four pillars I want to talk. You talked about the four pillars just real briefly there, and I know your four pillars because I've heard you talk about them before. But let's let the listener know about the four pillars you have as you think about this longevity kind of. It's a great mental map, right? And we need mental maps to be able to grab information quickly and then kind of progress from there. So give us your mental model for the four pillars of longevity.
Yeah. So the way that we describe it is in terms of circles. Actually, pillars, circles doesn't really matter. It's nomenclature. But the point is that there's a life energy circle, which is really the psychospiritual space, and life energy is really the circle that binds all the other ones together. So imagine that you have a circle, and it's called life energy. Well, what is life energy? Well, it's things that related to, do you have a growth mindset? What kind of mental illness issues are you dealing with, right? What kind of traumas have you experienced that you're still living in reaction to? How good are your relationships? How are you developing wisdom, right? What about self-doubt and guilt and shame and things like this, right? And then how do you actually feel unconditional love for yourself? Many people don't feel unconditional love for themselves. And then getting to a point where you can feel unconditional love for yourself is very healing. And the reason this circle is so important is because when you take the stress out of living in reaction to your traumas, you actually heal those traumas and then transcend them and become grateful for everything that ever happened, because it's brought us to this point with this much wisdom, insight, empathy, etc. Now you're actually changing the impact that your psychology and your nervous system has on your biology. One of the other big ones on that circle is feeling safe. When you have the realization that nothing external to us can ever make us feel safe, there's no amount of money, no education, no, book you can write or read or family you belong to or community or church or whatever you're part of that can ever make you feel safe. Safety is an inside job, just like unconditional self-love is an inside job. Then that becomes a psycho-spiritual question. But once you're able to find safety in the midst of anything, right, and we know from history that everything can be taken away in a matter of moments, quite honestly. So how do you give yourself ultimate safety, unconditional love, and then how do you find your purpose, your meaning in life, right? So when you put all those things together, now your biology is functioning in a garden of neurological energy that is actually not tearing it down with stress, but actually building it up with love and joy and creativity and satisfaction and rewarding relationships, right? And so this is a massive missing piece. We focus on the biochemistry. Well, we're going to adjust your hormones. We're going to adjust your peptides. We're going to fix your gut. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And we can do all that. But it's the environment that it resides in the psycho-spiritual space that drives so much of the decline in the first place. And conversely, it can actually help reverse all of it. So that's the number one circle, life energy. Number two is longevity. Longevity is basically looking at the hallmarks of aging, right? And we're up to about 12. I think there's probably about 16 currently myself when I look at it. But the point is that these are the actual biological processes that are driving and accelerating aging, right? And it's not just hormones. It's telomere shortening, it's senescent cell burden, it's inflammation, it's gut dysbiosis, it's DNA damage that's not being repaired, it's proteins that aren't being made or folded properly or disposed of properly, etc. So these hallmarks of aging, mitochondrial dysfunction for that matter, oxidative stress, etc. So these hallmarks of aging, which are both phenotypic expressions, in other words, they're actually expressions of aging, but they're also drivers of aging, right? And they all play together. They all play off each other. So when one starts to fail, it impacts four others, and those four others failing impact another four, and then that feeds back to the initial ones. And so it's this spiral, and this is why it's an exponential decline. It spins up like a tornado. And what happens in most longevity practices is they're not focused on the hallmarks, they're focused on the phenotypic expressions, right? We're gonna make you feel better, look better, your muscles will be stronger, we'll heal this, we'll heal that, we'll fix your gut, etc. But we're not really re-lengthening your telomeres, we're not really optimizing mitochondrial function, we're not pruning senescent cells, we're not modulating their, balancing that, we're not augmenting DNA repair. And when you go after that circle, now I call it getting at the root cause of biological aging. And then there's health. The health circle is basically all the functional medicine things we know about. And that's root cause medicine. But longevity medicine is root cause of root cause medicine, which is why that circle is so important. And then the fourth circle is performance. So when I'm 100, I want to be fast, agile, strong, quick, balanced, great cardiovascular capacity, reserve, flexibility, right? I want to be able to do anything I want to do. I want to run down the stairs. I want to snowboard. I want to, roll in the grass with my great-great-grandkids, whatever it is, right? I don't want to have any limitations. And in order to do that, if I'm going to do that at 100, I need to do that today. And if I'm going to do that today, then I need to train for that. And the interesting thing is that the workout that you did, when you were 18 isn't the workout you need in your 30s. And what you did in your 30s isn't the one you need in your 40s. And what you did in your 40s isn't the one you need in your 50s. You have to keep adapting your workouts to actually get to the goals of what I just outlined there. So there's a lot of, again, asking the right questions. How do I maintain that 30-year-old body, right? And you realize that lifting weights and going for a run, which worked when you're 18, is not going to work for you when you're 65, right? So
if I've got a 30-year-old body, it makes sense I should have a 30-year-old workout. But you're saying, no. If you're 70 years old and you want a 30-year-old body, you've got to do a different workout when you're 70 to get there than when you're 30. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So, I have this conversation with clients all the time, and I tell them that really all of life comes down to one thing, right? Just one thing. And everybody looks at me like, really? Just one thing? I mean, yeah, just one thing. And it's optimizing our nervous system. How we think, how we feel, what we believe is true, what we think is possible, how we move through space, right? All of it. The traumas we've not resolved, the love, all of it. All of it comes down to the nervous system. When you optimize the nervous system, you understand that when you're training, you have to train your nervous system. So when you're training the nervous system to activate the muscles that need to be activated. And that happens naturally when you're 18, but when you're going through life, nerve and muscle intervention, or innervation rather, can decrease. And so you've got to actually stimulate that. So lots of balance training, lots of isometric exercises to activate things, right? You've got to build the cardio back. You've got to build the strength, the flexibility. It doesn't just happen. So you can have a 30-year-old body, but the way you get there is not the same as it would be if you were 18 years old, if that makes sense. Yeah. So the fifth area that we've added since I wrote the book is the environments that we reside in. And so when we think about the environments, really we all live in four predominantly, right? Home, business, business travel, and vacation. All right, that's at least 96% of it. And so architecting each of those environments to support the mission, to make it as effortless as possible to stay on track with what you're trying to do. And it takes, conscientious architecture to do that. I've had clients that were doing great. They said, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe the progress I was making. I felt like I was 30 years old again. I could do anything. Then we went to Italy for 3 weeks and the wheels came off and I came back and, all this stuff. So it's like, oh, okay, well, we need to architect each of those. So we actually are hiring an implementation specialist to help our people implement across the 5 circles in all 4 of those environments, right? So that's a really key piece. How do you make it easy, fun, rewarding? How you mix it up so it doesn't get boring, that kind of thing. So
that's home, work, business travel, and vacation.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Love that.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to jump all over Randy and Anthony. There's so much to do here, Anthony. Go ahead.
Well, I had a question, but when you started, Jeff, with the Dr. Jeff, with the circles, and you talked about the outer circle, it struck me that that's the most difficult place to make progress. It made me think, boy, do I need some psychotherapy, some counseling, to really find, what's troubling me, why I don't feel the way I should feel, and so forth. So how does your team attack that or deal with that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we work with therapists, and we have them on our team. They're not employed by us, but they're people we refer people to, depending on what someone's needs are. And so we can assess where people are in the life energy circle through conversation, right? We can get a sense. And I'm an INFP on the Myers-Briggs, right? So I'm very intuitive, very perceptive, and I can read people's energies very well. And so I can get a feel for people very quickly in terms of where they might be struggling. And so with that, then we also do testing. So we're measuring, I don't know if you're familiar with a brain tap. There's a brain tap neurocheck is what it's called. And basically it's a computer, and we put clips on people's wrists, and it will actually, in 5 minutes, it will read the status of their nervous system, the sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system balance, how deep the stress goes into the neurohormonal component, cardiovascular risk, brain assessments, things like this. And it'll actually give them a neurological age, if you will. And so it's possible to document this not only through conversation related to prior experiences or that kind of thing, but also in terms of how much stress somebody's carrying in their system. And what we find is that a lot of people are unaware of the amount of stress that they carry. We had a woman in here not long ago that comes to mind who said, I'm not really under any stress. My husband, is extremely successful, and, I don't have any real stress. Love my grandkids, etc. And I looked at her profile, and it told a completely different story. And I said, well, there's something going on here where you seem to be carrying more stress than maybe you're able to perceive right now. And she said, well, I'm having some trouble with my daughter-in-law. It's like, well, let's talk about that for a minute. It's like, oh, okay. And then it got into her birthing order. She was the oldest. She was always responsible for the other kids. Now she's having some conflict with her daughter-in-law who doesn't really want her input on the grandkids. And so she's actually carrying more stress than she realizes. And what happens for a lot of people is they're wearing a backpack, and they've worn the backpack for so long that they don't really know what it's like to carry it anymore. It's just like it's part of them. And what we do is we help people identify that they have a backpack, and then we can actually help them take the backpack off. And when people are able to do that through a combination of speaking with a therapist or doing other things, modifying their nervous system, their balance between sympathetic and parasympathetic with brain tap or meditation or other things. Some of the folks have even gone on to do psychedelic assisted therapies with practitioners to help have some breakthroughs. And out of all of that, people can take the backpack off. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, I get it now. And their scores will improve dramatically because we can measure how the stress has been dissipated. It's really remarkable, and they're very encouraged by it. So while it can be in a traditional medical practice the hardest thing to get to, Anthony, to your question, in our practice, it's one of the easiest things to get to. And it's really one of the things we go straight at right from the get-go because we know how important it is.
Well, I've never had a doctor really spend any time, I don't know about Randy and John, really spend any time talking about, quote unquote, my complete mental health. It's more about how you're feeling, how the kids,
That's it.
that surface level amount of stress.
Yep.
It's not really a deep dive. I mean, I had a personal experience yesterday of a full day of joy with my grandson. Started the morning, I'm out here in Arizona babysitting, and started the morning at the park flying a remote control airplane,
Beautiful.
a race car, a Formula One race car thing,
Yep.
and I went off to what's called Andretti's, which is they have a go-karts and
Yep.
video games and everything else. Well, shit, when I got home and we sat down and put the kid down, my wife and I said, "Jeez, oof, that was brutal. That was hard. That was really difficult." So all that joy, the end of the day was, oh my God, can I actually do that again? And I'm in pretty good shape. I'm 69. I'm in pretty good shape.
Mm-hmm.
And I exercise every day. I do a lot of the things we talk about. But even when you have a joyful moment, you're still at the end. There's still stress and tension and worry about the next day and how we're going to keep up with
Yeah.
it. So.
Yeah, I think, it depends on essentially on basically how you build the nervous system. So one of the things that you're talking about is, having joy and feeling love and all those kinds of things. And when the nervous system is actually deconstructed and reconstructed, you'll find that it's not really about how much love and joy can you hold. It's not about that. It's about how much love and joy can flow through you. You become a conduit for it. You're not trying to create a reservoir of it. It takes energy to hold a reservoir. It's easier to let it flow through you. And then when you understand that tomorrow you have the opportunity to do the exact same thing again, but you're not trying to hang on to it, right? It's all the psychic energy to concentrate on him and the car and all that stuff. But if you go into a relaxed sort of just, I'm here to enjoy whatever happens, you'll find that at the end of the day, you feel more energized than you feel drained. It's again about training the nervous system. So, yeah.
Well, thanks for that free advice. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, there's good stress and bad stress, right? Just like when you're lifting weights, there's good ways to exercise. So talk about like the kind of good stress versus bad stress and what you talk to your clients about.
Yeah, so hormetic stress is what you're talking about here, and this is basically a physical stress. It even could be an emotional challenge, but it's a physical stress that is enough to cause your body to react and get stronger because of it, but not enough to break it down to the point where it's damaged permanently, right? And so hormetic stresses are super important, right? And it's super important to stress the nervous system also, playing games, puzzles, doing stuff like that, learn the piano, whatever it is. Stressing the system keeps it youthful. That's why balance training is so important, right? Doing it with your eyes closed, right? Being on a balance board or whatever else. All of these things are challenges to the system. And you have to realize that you're challenging not only the muscle and the joint and the tendon, but you're challenging the nervous system ultimately. And when you do that, and you do it in a variety of different ways, then that's how you get stronger. I will say that when it comes to how you navigate life, one of the illustrations that I'm using for people in the practice now, I'm actually showing them a video of a mogul skier. And I don't know if you guys have seen professional mogul skiers, right? How they go down through those bumps, right? And when you look at a professional mogul skier, their body is down the fall line. The upper body is still. The head is looking not at the mogul in front of them, but looking all the way down the hill, right? And their legs are basically bouncing back and forth over the moguls, right? And what happens if you see a novice mogul skier, right? Or like me, if I'm on a snowboard in a mogul field, I'm like bouncing here and bouncing there and trying to catch myself. And, it's like a yard sale, right? And I tell people that the idea for us in terms of visualizing what we want our nervous systems to be like is to be like a mogul skier, where there are many different obstacles / opportunities in life. There are no problems, there are only opportunities. So now you have all these different opportunities to kind of joyously go through the mogul field, but your upper system and your nervous system is calm. You're simply navigating it, right? It's a little bit like Keanu Reeves in The Matrix. A bullet gets fired, and you basically just lean back and watch it go by. It's like, oh, well, that's interesting. I don't have to take the hit. I don't have to react, right? So when you basically master the nervous system in terms of how you perceive the world and also how you move through space, all of a sudden you have a completely different life. It's really a beautiful thing.
Well, how do I get started? So if I'm listening here, first time really thinking about this, I might be, entrepreneur who's younger in my journey or someone who's been on the journey for a while but haven't thought about it with this particular kind of point of view. How do I get started?
Well, there's lots of ways to get started. We have our own podcast, the Gladden Longevity Podcast. We have over 320 podcasts out there now, I think. I've been a guest on many podcasts.
Amazing podcast, by the way. I just want to, for half a second, it's such a great place to go for knowledge, for learning, for cool stories. If you haven't checked out Jeffrey's podcast, do it today. Amazing place to get information. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's fun to do. And then the book 100 is the New 30. It's on Audible as well if people like to listen to it. I read the entire book. I wrote every word in the book myself. This was before AI, just before AI came in. And so that's there. And then if people are really interested to engage with us, they can reach out through the Gladden Longevity website, and they can book a call to see if we might be a good fit for them. And we have people in their 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s, right? We have people with all kinds of either issues or non-issues. We have young people that have been very successful with their business and sold it. We have people that are still in the middle of their working years, all kinds of things. And we've helped athletes. We have a woman right now that's joining us who's 45 that's set a world record in, she's the only woman to have ever summited the second highest peak on all 7 continents. And now this year she's going to complete the highest peak on all 7 continents. And she's 45. And it's like, you know what? I'm starting to lose my edge here. Come in and help me. So it's like, okay, great. Come on in. So we can optimize, we're all about optimization and we help people optimize. The first thing, however, for somebody to understand is that when you're going to really optimize yourself, it's not about what is somebody going to do for you, what are you going to take, what are you going to do. It's really how do you deconstruct where you are. And the analogy I use for business people is if you're going to buy a business, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to deconstruct that business from stem to stern. What's the cash flow? What are the liabilities? What's the pipeline? All the different things. What's the, how's the material come in, and what are the challenges? You want to know everything about it. Once you deconstruct it, it's like, oh, okay, now I see that it has value, and I see that these things need to be mitigated and these things need to be optimized. It's exactly the mindset we take. It's like, let's understand you deeply first. Then we can actually show you how to start to move forward. So that's really the approach that we use. And it becomes a custom fit for each client that we work with because of that.
Are there 2 or 3 things, if someone's not able to get to see you right away, they're going to read your book, like 2 or 3 things that everyone should consider doing right away?
I think there are some things that are universally good, right? So I would say that using a device like BrainTap, and I don't have any financial relationship with them, right? So this is not me trying to sell something, but BrainTap is a photobiomodulation and binaural beats device that you can wear that will actually train your brain into a meditative state, whether it's a deep theta state, like just before you're going to fall asleep. It can help you sleep and put you into delta, so you're in a delta waveform to fall asleep. You can go into alpha, which is a typical meditative state, or gamma, which is a flow state, before you go play golf, and you'll play golf better. But you can start to learn to control your mind, right? Learn to control where your mind is, and you can go into a meditative state. And the goal is, once you learn how to control your mind, then it's not just about, well, I meditated for 10 minutes and now I'm going to go about my day. It's like, no, I'm going to go through my entire day in a meditative state. And then you become a mogul skier, right? You become a pro mogul skier. It's like, oh, okay, you've taken a lot of stress out. So that's something I think everybody can do. I think, molecular hydrogen, we do have a molecular hydrogen product that we think is special. It's basically imprinted with energy or chill that's, universally good. Hydrogen seems to be universally good for people to manage oxidative stress, things like that. Diet is a funny thing. The problem with diets is that they all start with a food. And in actual fact, you've got to start with the individual. What are your sensitivities? What's your gut? What do you like? What's your gut biome? How do you digesting food? All these things, right? So until you deconstruct, you really don't know what to recommend. And so we're big fans of deconstruction. We find that we're much more precise and we get much better results when we go about it that way.
Yeah. Assess before you do the work. That seems pretty smart. Not everyone does that. They just want to do the work sometimes, making that assessment.
Right. Come on and we'll give you exosomes. Come on and we'll give you peptides. Come on and we'll do this, we'll do that, right? We'll jump in the cold plunge, do the sauna, right? I mean, all those things have a place. We have all the technologies. We have all of them. The question, though, is what do you actually need? And what's going to get you the biggest bang for the buck? Yeah.
Well, all of us can afford, and Brian Johnson can afford, whatever he needs or wants to give a shot at. But most of our listeners and most people in our lives are, looking for I won't call them shortcuts, but things that they can do. So can you weigh in on a lot of some of the currently popular things that are making the rounds, like vibration plates and red light and sauna? You touched on peptides and so forth. I'm sure they're all good, but if you were advising a 50-year-old who's on a moderate income and in decent shape but wants to get going, what anything that they should just stay away from that's kind of in the zeitgeist that is just sham, kind of a sham?
Well, I don't think any of the things that you're mentioning are sham products, right? I think, red light, sauna, there's great data on sauna, Swedish sauna. There's, the study that came out in 2015 in the American Journal of Medicine that basically showed that if you took, men between, I think it was age 40 and 60, and followed them for 20 years and looked at sauna usage, right, at 180 degrees for 20 minutes or 19 minutes actually. And you looked at how they did, that the guys that used it 4 days a week or more had a 55% reduction in Alzheimer's and dementia, right? 50% reduction in heart disease, 40% reduction in all-cause mortality and cancer. It's hard to compete with that, right? So
Right.
sauna is pretty much universally good, unless you've got some heat-induced rash, or you've got some, some other situation where maybe that's not the right thing, right? So those things are good. Cold plunge can be helpful. You're basically stimulating a ton of dopamine. If you've got cardiovascular disease and high blood pressure, you may want to actually think about that twice, because you're going to spike your blood pressure when you hit the cold water. If you've had a stroke or a bleed or an aneurysm, it's probably not the right thing, right? So again, you need to actually understand who you are before you just jump into the ice water. I think hormone optimization is critical. And hormone optimization is really done poorly. People go in and they get a testosterone measured and an estrogen, and it's like, okay, well, we're going to put you on testosterone now, and we don't want you to have too much estrogen, so we're going to put you on an estrogen blocker, and then they just leave them there. Well, it turns out that men need estrogen just as much as women need testosterone. Right. And it's not really about the levels as much as it is the metabolates that determine your risk for prostate cancer, breast cancer, endometrial cancer. So unless you're looking at the whole picture and deconstructing it, just to go to a T clinic and have them put you on testosterone and anastrozole is like one of this. I mean, it's kind of like playing Russian roulette, quite honestly. So I will say that sexual activity is a good thing, right? It's been shown that men...
Sorry, say that again real quick. I just want to make sure we all hear that really clearly.
Okay. Having lots of sexual activity is really good. It's really, really good. Yeah, let me say it one more time. Sexual activity is wonderful because...
Dr. Jeffrey Gladden, everyone.
That's right. All right. Yeah, we write prescriptions for it all the time. So, no, the point is that men that have more than 20 ejaculations a month have a significantly decreased risk of prostate cancer, right? When you actually have sexual activity, you're releasing oxytocin. Oxytocin is a molecule that not only makes you feel connected to the person you're with, but it also has so many benefits. It lowers stress, it re-lengthens telomeres, it increases autophagy, it decreases inflammation. I mean, so better connection, right? We live in a digital world. We're kind of connected to our phones, but we need to be connected to each other. I was just reading something where we also need to be connected to nature, right? It doesn't cost anything, but the trees, when you're out amongst the trees, they're actually letting go molecules into the air that boost your immunity. Isn't that fascinating, right? Yes. So there's so many things about being out in nature that are good for us, right? Now, if you've got, predisposition to skin cancers, you can take something like HelioCare and still get out in the sun. HelioCare, polypodium leukotomus, it's an amazing molecule. If you have skin cancers, we've seen amazing results with that. But you can protect yourself from that. But getting out in the sun, right? Getting your feet in the ground, all these things, these are free, right? So if you're talking about what can somebody do on a low budget, the other big thing is it's not so much what you add as what you take away. Look at the things you're eating, the things you're drinking, the air that you're breathing, right? How much time you're spending in front of blue light, things like that. Migrate that towards, more of a plant-based diet, right? Where you're getting many phytonutrients. And we think that the carnivore diet is kind of faulty in a way that you're getting so much methionine that you're actually accelerating aging, right? So, and your body likes to be keto part of the time, but not all of the time, right? The biology doesn't want to be pushed in a corner. It's really an economy of balance. It likes to cycle through different states. It wants to be fed. It wants to be fasted. It wants to have plenty of protein. It wants to be protein deficient. It wants all these different cycles. And so I think that's really important. And there's a weird thing out there about, older people need to just pound protein. Well, that's really kind of crazy too, because high protein diets are associated with accelerating aging, more mTOR activation. So you really want to get the protein that you need, but you can actually get it through something called perfect aminos, where you get all the essential amino acids and you don't have to eat all that protein. And then if you're hormonally optimized, you can make muscle and connective tissue and things like that. So there's lots of different things out there that need to be done well. But really, if you're listening to this, it's like, oh, let me get outside. Let me take out the things in my diet I know are hurting me. And let me have more love in my life, right? And those are like massive. And then the first thing is, let me go get my hormones tested, right? We find also a lot of subclinical hypothyroidism out there. We measure resting metabolic rates on everybody. We find thyroid blood tests are misleading all the time. So if somebody doesn't feel like they have much energy, one of the first things we do is say, okay, let's look at your mitochondria and everything, but let's do a resting metabolic rate and see where your thyroid's set, right? That you can do that for a few $100s, not terribly expensive. So anyway, those are some things off the top of my head.
How do
Along-
you, real quick, John, the, bioidentical hormones versus synthetic?
Yeah,
You-
you want to use bioidentical, particularly if you're a woman,
Yeah.
you know, with progesterone. And progestins, of course, have increased breast cancer risk. Progesterone decreases breast cancer risk. So you want to be on bioidentical stuff, yeah.
Okay.
And then topical versus oral, those are all questions to be answered, you know, from deeper medical understanding for the individual, right? Or injectable. So those are all, you know, they all have their place, is my point.
Great.
And then along
Good,
those
yeah.
lines, clean up the debate about like full body MRI. Like I think there's two sides to that debate about whether it's a good use of time, energy, money. But talk us through that.
Well, I think, you know, we get full body MRIs on virtually all of our clients at some point because we want to know, is there a brain aneurysm? Is there AAA, abdominal aortic aneurysm? Or is there, you know, some cyst in the liver or whatever that we just want to know about, right? Because, you know, people will have funny stuff show up. On the other hand, I think the biggest lie about these imaging scans is that, oh, I don't have cancer. My MRI was clean. I don't have cancer. That is like, it's worse than a lie. It's actually misleading because cancer is microscopic. MRIs have a resolution of, you know, a few millimeters, but you can't see cancer cells on an MRI scan. By the time you see cancer cells on an MRI scan, you've got billions of them, right? And they're probably in your bloodstream. So we need better screening tools. There's a new, we send stuff over to Greece to have it look for circulating tumor cells. There's another place in Dallas that does a similar thing. There's a new test coming out that we're excited about, actually developed in India, that can detect stage 1 cancer. I will say that Grail is a terrible test. It's almost useless, quite honestly. It has a 70% chance of picking up stage 1 cancer. So we've never liked Grail or Gallery tests. But the idea that you can get a scan done and be told that you're clear of cancer is the worst information you can get. It's tragic, quite honestly. Yeah. Particularly if you're a cancer survivor. Yeah, particularly if you're a cancer survivor. We had a guy come in with previous melanoma recently on the left side of his chest. 4 years ago, it was removed. It was removed. Was told everything's clear, everything's fine. We said, okay, well, that's great. Let's send some blood over to Europe and see what we see. So it came back, melanoma, circulating melanoma cells, right? So it's like, okay, well, let's do the DNA deconstruction on that. Okay, it's actually cancer. So let's send him for a PET CT. Now we send him for a PET CT, right? He's got a hot node under his left axilla in his left armpit, right? So now he's going down to Mexico and he's getting very advanced immune therapies and some other things to kind of augment this. But this is the kind of tragedy. People are told that they're clear, and then how many times have you heard they show up with mets all over the place 5 years, 6 years, 4 years, 10 years later? It's like it's the worst. It's the worst thing that medicine does, I think, is to tell people they don't have cancer when we really don't know unless you do more sophisticated testing. Yeah.
Yeah. So a long way to go in science, that's for sure. And hopefully it continues advancing at the accelerating pace that it's going. So
It will.
that's great stuff. That's great
Can
stuff.
can you go back to the protein discussion? We've been in recent discussions in our peer group. We've been going back and forth on all kinds of things that we're hearing, and you know what's the latest, and so on and so forth. And you mentioned something I'm not familiar with, relative to getting the benefits of protein without actually eating steak 3 times a day. Can you talk more about that?
There's a product. Yeah, there was a product that was developed by a physician actually out of Florida who was an Ironman. And I think he's done like 50 different Ironman races. And he ended up developing a protein replacement product called Perfect Aminos. It's just amino acids, and it's all the essential amino acids in the proprietary ratios. If you eat an egg white, which is nature's perfect protein, right? You get about 49% of that protein actually goes into building protein. People are eating protein because they want to build protein in their body, right? If you're eating collagen, only 22% of that goes into actually making collagen. The special thing about collagen is that it actually stimulates collagen production. So that's an interesting thing about collagen. Whey protein, right? Only about 31 or 32% of that goes into actually making protein. So you're exposing, what happens to the rest of it? Well, it goes into carbohydrate, right? Or it could even go, be processed through the kidneys, things like that. So the point is that if you want to build protein in the body, which is really what you want. You don't care if you're eating protein. What you care is if you're building proteins, right? Muscle and tendon and ligament, things like that. Yeah. So if you take perfect aminos, 99% of it goes into building protein. So now you don't have to expose yourself to all of the excess protein, right? And the mTOR activation that comes from that. You can just use the perfect aminos. And if you have kidney disease, you don't want all that protein in your system, right? So then you can use the perfect aminos and get what you want without having to saturate yourself with like tons and tons of protein.
And that's vegan. It's a vegan product. Interesting.
Yeah. It's not. That's right. Oh. So perfect aminos is what it's called. It comes in a powder. It comes in tablets, and so we use it. Sometimes you want to be anabolic, right? Sometimes you want to be catabolic. When you're anabolic and building stuff, then that's a good time to be taking the perfect aminos, lifting weights, using peptides like CJC 1295 to stimulate growth hormone release and things like that. That's all wonderful then. But if you're fasting, you don't want to be doing that, right? You want to be catabolic. So now you don't want all the mTOR activation. You want to be activating AMPK. So you're fasting, you're doing cardio, you're using things like berberine or metformin to activate AMPK, which is then stimulating all the recycling, all the autophagy. That's where the NMN comes in for DNA repair and things like that, right? So there's a sophisticated way to actually think about this.
And the services that you do, the people that come to you and are on the program and stay on the program, they have counselors that are working with them, talking to them about the science that obviously is zipping over the top of my head. Is that what your program's all about? Okay.
Yeah. So to work with us, you don't have to understand all the science that we understand, right? I mean, there are very few people that do that come in from the lay population. And yet what we try to do is we use the 5 circles basically as a template. So we're going to deconstruct you across all 5 circles. Then we're going to actually find out the results across all 5 circles. We'll share those with you in terms of what we found. But then we distill it down into what's the action blueprint for each of the circles, right? And we make it digestible, right? People can't do 100 things. And what we've discovered is that if people are overwhelmed, they disengage. So what you want to do is you actually want to feed them enough information to be actionable, but also encourages them to continue to be compliant. And then you can layer things in as they build up their own systems for it, right? And so we have people that help with that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you don't have to be in Dallas, Texas to get your services, or do you expect people to come up to Dallas and...
Yeah, so that's a great question. So medical legally in the state of Texas, we have to see people in Texas at least once in a year to establish a physician-patient relationship. We call them clients, but it's really, in the eyes of the Texas Medical Board, it's a physician-patient relationship. So people do come in, and what we found is that in order to do the deconstruction, it's much more efficient to come here and let us do it over 2 days or 3 days. You can't, otherwise you'd be running all over the place trying to get this stuff done, and it's done poorly, and it's not done right, and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, people come in and spend 2 or 3 days with us. This woman that I just told you about that's going to summit all these mountains is coming in this week for a couple days to get a bunch of stuff done. Then she'll go home. We'll get her results. We'll have some results for her on day 2 from day 1, some of the biometric testing, and then we'll get some of her other stuff back, genetics and whatever else, which will take up to 5 or 6 weeks potentially. But then we'll start feeding her information, and again, across the 5 circles, so that she can start taking action, and we can start getting her going, knowing that she's going to be doing this, extreme athletic activities. We start building the things that we know are going to be most crucial for that from the get-go, and then we'll work into the longevity pieces as well. So, yeah.
You do continuous glucose monitoring. Is that part of the program, or is that really not necessary? Oh, it is?
No,
Okay.
continuous glucose monitoring is useful. The problem with continuous glucose monitoring is it doesn't measure insulin levels. So we do 2-hour glucose tolerance tests with insulin curves on every single client because it's stunning to see, actually, even somebody with a hemoglobin A1C of 5.2 and a fasting blood sugar of 89, you challenge them with 75 grams of glucose, they may be diabetic for an hour, right, or 2 hours. They may have fasting insulin levels that are even normal at 2 or 3, and they may shoot up. Instead of shooting up 5 times, they may shoot up 25 times. We had a young girl in here that wasn't diabetic. Normal, she was just graduating high school, 18, came in with new onset MS. And we basically, hemoglobin A1C was like 5.2, fasting blood sugar 89. We said we think you should do a glucose tolerance test, just morphologically and hereditary-wise, it appeared that might be useful. We did that, and her blood sugar shot up to over 200. Her insulin level, just so people listening, a normal insulin level should be about 3, 4, maybe 5, something like that. It should go up maybe 5 times when it's challenged, so maybe up to 20 or 25, somewhere in there. Her insulin level went up over 200.
Wow.
Right? So this is a young woman who is basically charting a course for diabetes. The beta cells of an 18-year-old can push out that much insulin, but how many years can you do that for? It would have been completely missed by her doctor. It would have been completely missed by everybody, right? So a CGM can be good because sometimes we'll see that people control the sugar beautifully, but it takes a ton of insulin to do it. And the insulin is aging us. It actually causes thickening in the arteries, right? It increases senescent cell formation. It's activating mTOR just like IGF-1 is. So it's about looking behind the curtain. This is why the deconstruction is so critical to get right, because otherwise you think you know what you're doing and you still don't, right? And that's what we're trying to solve for. Yeah.
Thanks.
I think that's if my big takeaway today is going to be like diagnosis before treatment, right? Like that sounds so incredibly obvious, but talking with your medical provider, and not just get diagnosis, but get the right diagnosis where you're engaged with the provider and you're doing the things that work for you, not the things that work for people or for the statistics. So, Jeff, this has been great. I mean, I think we're going to have you back on. We're going to want to dive deep into a couple of different topics for sure for people. It's an amazingly dense set of material. But I think the big good news takeaway is that if you want an abundant and long life, we now have answers today that we didn't have in decades past. We can do something right now, regardless of your age. And there are experts like Jeff that you can turn to and jump in right away. So great. So if someone wants to come find you online, Jeff, where are they going to find you?
Yeah, so if you go to gladdenlongevity.com, you'll get access to all the resources. There is a new website coming out, I think, in the next 6 weeks that's we've been working on pretty hard. But the one that we have there now will lead you to the social media, it'll lead you to the book, it'll lead you to the supplement shop, it'll lead you to scheduling an appointment if you want to talk with us, if you're interested to work with us. People work with us many times for a year at a time, so there's a membership fee, which is also an insurance policy as well. So we sort of go at risk. You pay us a fee, and then no matter what turns up, you're in a car accident, you develop cancer or an aneurysm or stroke or whatever, we're there to take care of you all the way through. And then there's testing on top of that. So the investment can be, for some people, can be significant. For other people, it's not. But it's really the best investment you can ever make, right? It's maintaining your health and your vitality. I mean, the return on investment there is massive. So
what would you pay for 10 extra years of life, right? And so that's amazing. And so check out the podcast as well. You'll see all that in the show notes. Jeff, thanks so much for being here. It's been an amazing conversation. Expect an invitation back very soon.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. Great to chat with all of you. Thank you.
Terrific. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. It's been fantastic.
Thanks.
Listen and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Click follow for more content like this, or go to talesofabundance.com to join our community and get free tools.